Let's start with Packers Bears. Bears have been all over Twitter, I think, is probably just an easy way to say it for the earlier parts of this week. You talk about, oh, we got to fire coaches, and they ended up dismissing Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator. But now we've got questions of like, oh, did Ryan Poles bring in a bad team? Is Matt Eberflus a bad coach? Is Caleb Williams a bad quarterback? Oh, my goodness. It feels like all of the discussions are open for Bears fans who are now 4-5 on the season, staring down the barrel of the toughest schedule in the NFL and left remaining, that is. And it starts here with the Green Bay Packers, just an absolute gauntlet that they have. This is in Chicago, so obviously that's a little bit of an advantage there. But Carmen, when you look at this game, what's the matchup that matters here for Packers Bears?
I will actually be in attendance for this game too, so that's going to be it's going to be very interesting. I've never witnessed a Bears win over the Packers since my time covering the league, I think. Yeah, because I would have been with the Bucks the last time they did it. Just absolutely, like, it's not a rivalry right now, but stranger things have happened. My matchup that matters is a little bit of an offshoot. I'm probably cheating on this, but it's Thomas Brown, their new offensive coordinator and offensive play caller, versus the odds, because usually this doesn't end up working out, but in the immediate, there could be some juice. There could be a spark. We've heard Cole Kmet, the tight end, who has been completely absent from this offense since the bye week, talk about how he thinks that Thomas Brown can bring a spark. The way that some of the veteran leadership on this offense is talking about Thomas Brown. He also comes from this Sean McVay tree. He worked under Sean McVay in Los Angeles for the Rams. He was their running backs coach there. Went to Carolina last year. This is a deja vu situation for him. Had to take over play calling duties from Frank Reich when he was fired in Carolina. It didn't go so well then, but there's not a whole lot you can do, especially when you come in at this point in the season. And even with the Bears now, your playbook is the playbook. The system is the system. You cannot change that at this point in the season. What you can do is try to be a little bit more intentional with your game plans, or trying to get the ball into the hands of your playmakers and work within what's already been installed. And you need to see if Thomas Brown can do that, if he understands this personnel a little bit more than Luke Getsy did, or Luke Getsy. Well, that was the other coordinator they fired.
They're hoping he understands it a little bit better than Luke Getsy did.
A little bit better than Shane Waldron. And what we're really looking for, what at least I'm really looking for here, is to see that short to intermediate passing game get going. Get Caleb Williams into a rhythm. His passing splits this season on throws of 9 yards or less. He has an 81.7 PFF grade, just 3 turnover-worthy plays, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's got 1,092, over 1,000 yards just on those types of plays alone. Intermediate, it's pretty good too, 10 to 19 yards. He only has 1 turnover-worthy play on throws of 10 to 19 yards. It's when you get to those 20 or more yard throws, those throws down the field, those home run balls that Caleb Williams wants to throw, especially given how much the Bears have been behind, especially since their bye week. He wants to get those chunk plays. It's just not there. He's just not accurate. 5 turnover-worthy plays on those types of throws. He does have 2 touchdowns on them, but 4 interceptions. So this is something that clearly you need to coach him up to take the stuff underneath, to utilize your players like your running backs and your tight ends kind of in those short to intermediate routes, in those routes over the field. The Bears just haven't really been throwing it over, like they haven't been utilizing the middle of the field at all. It's been just really discombobulated in Chicago. I could go on and on about how much this offense is not working. I do expect to see a little bit more creativity out of Thomas Brown as well, see if he can infuse this offense with a little bit more motion in particular. Something I looked up, the Bears are running 11 personnel at the 11th highest rate in the league, which is very indicative of a Sean McVay kind of offense. Sean McVay, we know, lives in 11 and almost exclusively. But what the Bears don't do that the Rams do is they don't use motion. They have the 3rd fewest motion snaps of any team this year. And if you're going to live in one personnel over the other, you need to mix it up. You need to put some of that window dressing on it. In contrast, the Rams have the most motion snaps this year. So while they're staying in 11 personnel, they're mixing things up and kind of playing with the defense's eyes. So I think that those are some ways that Thomas Brown can get going here for the Bears. It's not going to be easy, but that's why it's him against the odds.
I think that's a good way to set it up. I almost titled my matchup that matters is just like Caleb Williams versus himself, and I'll get to that in a second. But you saying the phrase, the playbook is the playbook, reminded me of my least favorite phrase in sports, which is The standard is the standard.
Yeah.
What does this mean? What do you mean the standard is the standard? Like every coach and every team is just like, hey, the standard is the standard. I was like, what does that even mean? You're just saying
Thomas Brown also said an all-timer in his press conference today, saying that pressure is a privilege. Pressure is a privilege.
It's 100%. Now, look, but hold on, though. That one I could get on board with. That one's true, fine. Right? You got to defend the run first.
It's not as arbitrary as
right. You got to be good up front on first and second down. It is a privilege to be able to pin the ears back and rush the passer. That one I get. The standard is the standard. What again? What does that mean? What are you talking about? I feel like I'm watching a Ricky Bobby movie. Like, what does that even mean?
It's a coach way of saying it is what it is, maybe.
Sort of. Anyways, okay, so had to get it off my chest because it triggered me a little bit when you said the playbook is the playbook, and I just had immediate flashbacks to it. It's all right. We'll move on. Caleb Williams, I agree. I think the point that I would have pointed out if you did not was how much he is struggling on throws of 20 or more yards down the field. This is somebody who, when he was at Oklahoma, when he was at USC, this is someone who was fearless when it came to throwing the ball deep down the field. Now, was he perfect? No, but he was at least willing to do it, and he was confident doing it. Even in the reps where Caleb Williams is doing it, he does not look confident. And I think that's that to me was the biggest reason why I think you have to fire Shane Waldron when they did, because last week, I haven't seen Caleb Williams look that indecisive ever. Oklahoma, USC year 1, USC year 2. He's never been that indecisive. No. There were plays, and I know some people are pointing out like, oh, his offensive lineman wasn't helping him up when he got hit. There were definitely a couple of plays where that happened, and that's not a good look. But throughout the totality of the game, there were plenty of plays where the offensive linemen were still helping him up. It's not like they were abandoning him like he was Adam Sandler in The Longest Yard, and they just wanted to see him get killed out there. It wasn't quite to that level. But it was, what my big takeaway is you watch the early parts of the game. I'm even talking first quarter, and we've talked about how much the Bears have struggled in the first quarter. There was a specific play where it was a sack that Caleb took that was absolutely on him, where the offensive line actually blocked beautifully, set up the pocket really well, gave him more than 3 seconds to throw, and he just stood in the pocket, was completely indecisive, scanned the field. And I get it. Nobody's like necessarily wide ass open, but no. You gotta make a play. It's almost like he's fighting with himself to say, okay, well, I gotta stay in the pocket because everybody says I'm this like improviser and I improvise too much and I need to stay in the pocket. And it's almost like he's just freaking himself out. He's got so many voices in his head right now, and you can see it. And he's not pulling the trigger because of it. He's incredibly indecisive. And I think that's why you see the wide receivers are losing faith, the offensive line's losing faith, and you're making changes in the coaching staff. So to me, they needed a spark one way or the other, because with Caleb, it's never been about his ability. At this point, it's all mental. Like, it's all just in his head. And if a switch of whose voice is in his headset can get him out of that brain fog and that funk, that's what matters most. Now, the matchup that matters is Caleb hopefully being more confident throwing deep, but unfortunately, it's a bad week to try that. Because Green Bay Packers safeties, second highest graded safety room in the NFL when it comes to coverage grade, second only behind the Detroit Lions. Xavier McKinney, we've talked about his interceptions. Evan Williams returned to practice after a hamstring injury. They've got Javon Bullard in the mix as well, playing in the slot and in the safety position. So this is a tough week to say, hey, Caleb, let's open it up a little bit more. But if he can, and if he can look a little bit more confident, maybe that could swing things there for him. Plus factor, you've talked about this guy before. It is DeAndre Swift. I mean, the way that Caleb can maybe not have as many voices in his head is maybe thinking that not all the pressure in the world is on his shoulders. And when we're able to run the ball, obviously that helps. Swift, unfortunately, last 2 weeks, below a 4.0 yards per carry average. It has not been a dynamic offense, and it has not been a dynamic rushing attack. So they need a lot more there from him. And I think Packers fans who might be listening are like, hold on, whoa. You're going through this whole segment, you're not talking about us. Obviously, they're coming off of a bye week. Right before the bye week, it was kind of a crushing loss to the Detroit Lions, but they're getting a little bit healthier, as I mentioned, with Evan Williams. And this is a game that they should win. So I think the matchups that matters is more of how can Chicago really make this thing competitive, because if not, Green Bay, Packers fans, your team's better. Their team is better, and I got a lot more faith in the Packers to win this game, even as a division game on the road. Did you have a plus factor that was for the Packers, or are we going back to the Bears for yours?
Yeah, well, it was the Bears, just given that I was Caleb Williams' decision-making, which you went through beautifully. But what I do think is going to matter then in helping Caleb make the right decision is actually what the Packers are going to try to do against him. And you mentioned their safety room, and you mentioned Xavier McKinney, and how much this Jeff Hafley defense really runs through the safeties. It's why the Packers did something very uncharacteristic by going out and paying a large sum of money to Xavier McKinney. It's paid off and then some. But what Xavier McKinney can do particularly, and what he does well because of the veteran status he has, he can absolutely toy with Caleb Williams' eyes. He can absolutely move in different positions and try and delay that decision-making process by Caleb Williams. Is Caleb Williams going to fall for that bait? Is he going to fall victim to that, as we've seen many quarterbacks do? And you mentioned it too, Green Bay Packers coming off their bye week, Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, and Josh Myers all back at Packers practice. Tucker Kraft no longer wearing the red non-contact jersey. Marshawn Lloyd, their running back, designated to return off IR. This is a team that is going to be firing on all cylinders offensively. You are going to need to keep up with them if you're the Chicago Bears. How are you going to do that? I'm not sure at this point. You're going to need a hell of a spark, and they're going to be doing everything they possibly can to make it really, really hard on Caleb Williams. There's no mercy in this rivalry. There's no like, oh, sweetheart, okay, we'll take it easy on you. These teams hate each other, despite the fact it's been very lopsided for the last decade. I believe the Packers are 18-2 against the Bears in the last 10 years.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, it's bad. Matt LaFleur has never lost to the Chicago Bears since being the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. In fact,
wow.
I could go again. I could run down the list, and Bears fans are going to jump out of watching this right now, because it's not fun to be reminded of how much this hasn't been a rivalry. But these two teams still play for a lot of pride when they play against each other, so that's going to be really fun.
I don't think the streak is going to be broken this week, but we will see. We will see. Divisional matchups.
It's the NFL. It's the NFL. You never know.
Crazy
this
things
happened last week. This happened last week when we didn't give the Saints a shot, and look at that.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.